If you had the power to create more people like you, would you take that chance? Welcome to the Complete Story series, where I take trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then I read it dramatically back to you. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. In the Valiant universe, there are a group of individuals known as Psiots. They are granted powers some point in their life, normally when they're children. Well, one man wants to use these Psiots as weapons, and it'll be up to one boy to stop him. A long time ago, in 1951, a young man travels in search of something in a place that could not be found on any map. That young man's name is Toyo Harada, and when he reaches his destination, he is faced with numerous individuals, all pointing guns at him. The man in charge of them tells them to fire, but soon Toyo's eyes begin to glow, and he tells them to protect him from themselves. The men stop, then turn, and they begin shooting each other, and while they kill themselves, Toyo continues on his path until he reaches the cave. Inside the cave, he finds what he's looking for: the bleeding monk. Toyo asks him if he saw this coming, and the monk tells him, "Yes, Harbinger, I can see your future." In the current times, though, there is another young man by the name of Peter Stanek. Peter is different. He can hear things, hear the thoughts of people around him, and the only way to stop that is to take pills. Enough to where the voices seem to finally disappear. Peter and his friend Joe have been on the run for a while now, stealing what they need to survive, living in abandoned homes to keep shelter. However, this home that Peter has taken Joe to is a little different. It's his home from back when he was a child. As Peter and Joe drink and start to sleep, Joe mentions that no matter what, he won't be going back to that hospital, and Peter tells him not to worry. He promises no more hospitals, Joe. But elsewhere, there is someone looking, watching Peter, and that's Toyo. The next morning, Peter looks out the window to see Chris, a girl he knew when he was younger. Peter goes out to try and talk to her, but when he calls out to her, she doesn't remember him. Chris asks if he's here to stay, and Peter tells her that he's just passing through. Chris tells him that that's cool, but she's already late for class, so she kinda has to go. During this, Joe has made his way to the park in the neighborhood, but before long, cops passing by recognize Joe from a picture, and they quickly detain him. As the day goes on, Peter walks around town thinking back to when him and Chris were kids and they used to play. Sometimes, they would even kiss. Peter continues to wander around until he finds Chris coming out of class, and that's when he tries to talk to her again. Peter tells her that she has to remember him. She was the one good thing in his life. And Chris tells him the truth is, she does remember him, but she would rather not. People were afraid of you, Peter. You hurt people. Chris then turns to leave, but Peter tells her to wait, and then his eyes begin to glow, and he tells her to come back and to fall in love with him. She looks at him and the two of them begin to kiss, and later that night, Peter takes Chris back to his home, and as Chris sleeps, Peter starts to hear something calling out to him. When he goes outside, he sees that the individual calling out to him is a dog. More dogs begin to show up, and soon they begin to change into demons, and the first dog tells him to look through it all. Look through him! And that's when Peter finds himself sitting in a garden. He looks up and he sees that the man that was talking to him is Toyo Harada. Toyo tells him that he is special, and that Peter and him, they are something called Psiots. Toyo explains that there are three types of people: the norms, who are just regular people; the latents, who have their gift but haven't discovered it yet; and then there is them, the ones that are born activated, which is extremely rare. However, back in the current time, while Peter is talking to Toyo, Joe calls out to him and tells him that he just got arrested by the guy that's been chasing them, Tull. But he totally just let Joe go. But before Peter can even respond, a light shines on Peter, and Peter tells Joe that they didn't let him go, they followed him. And a moment later, soldiers begin to surround the home. Joe tells Peter that they need to go, but Peter tells him that they can't. Chris is still inside. And then soon, their heads begin to pound. Soldiers start to come in from inside the house holding Chris, and Peter sees that Toyo is not affected by the anti-Psiot technology. Peter asks him for help, but Toyo tells him that it's time to show his power. Stop hiding the potential that he has. As the soldiers begin to take down Joe and Chris, Peter begins to scream, "Stop it!" And with a force beyond what the soldiers are used to, they go flying back. The soldiers open fire, but the shots begin to bend around Peter, flying everywhere else. Peter starts to attack the soldiers, and then he calls out to the man Tull, knowing that he's out there. Soon the surveillance van with Tull in it watching Peter begins to move, and then it slams through a fence and lands in front of Peter. He looks down at the crushed van, and Tull asks him what he's gonna do. "Are you gonna kill me?" And Peter tells him, "No, Tull, you're just gonna forget everything." Peter falls, and inside his mind he sees Toyo, and Toyo explains that these soldiers are from Project Rising Spirit, a group that hunts Psiots. But he can help Peter, he just needs to let everyone go. Peter asks if they can take care of Joe, and Toyo tells him, of course, but if he comes with them now, there is no going back. And Peter tells Toyo, "I'll do it." Soon a van pulls up, and Rachel Hobson, a Psiot recruiter, opens the doors and tells everyone to get in. After driving for a bit and making their escape, the van suddenly stops, and Rachel tells Peter that it's time. Peter says Chris will go free and Joe will have a roof over his head, right? That's the deal. And Rachel tells him that she wouldn't have it any other way. So, Peter releases his hold he has on Chris, and she begins to scream, asking what he did to her. After Chris and Joe get out of the van, Rachel tells Peter to forgive them, but he's doing the right thing. It's the right thing for everyone. The van begins to drive away, leaving Chris and Joe with other members of Toyo's group. Rachel gives Peter a jacket to wear, and they begin to drive off into the night. After a bit of driving, Rachel brings Peter to the Harada Global Conglomerate's building. Once Peter gets out of the van, he sees more men with guns, and Rachel tells him it's just to show traditional defense. They don't want to expose that they have powers. Rachel goes on to explain that this place is the Harbinger Foundation, a secret school deep within the Harada building. And on their way to Peter's new room, he meets Amanda McKee, also known as Livewire, an attendant to Toyo. Amanda brings him inside his room, and he finally meets Toyo face to face. And Toyo welcomes Peter to his new lifestyle and tells him about who they are, who the Harbinger Foundation is. Harada Global operates to allow cohesion between all of humanity. They are the ones leading the charge of it, and after explaining some of their operations, Peter asks, wouldn't it be easier to just take over the markets with their powers? Toyo tells him yes, but then the whole cohesion process would be broken. The whole system wouldn't work that way, would it? Toyo then tells him that he should get some rest. Everything begins tomorrow. The first day is going to be pretty difficult. As Toyo leaves Peter, him and Amanda walk off, and he tells her to cancel the rest of his rounds. He'll be spending the rest of the night in consultation. Toyo then walks to a large metal door, and inside he finds the bleeding monk. The monk greets him, and Toyo tells him that there are people who doubt him for bringing Peter here. And then he asks the monk to show him what he sees. The monk tells him that he's always welcome inside his mind, but his vision has not changed. Peter Stanek is the Great Destroyer. The next morning, Peter puts on his uniform and he's called by one of the teachers there, Hidden Moon. As Hidden Moon walks him through the facility, he explains that currently there are 24 students here, and once they are activated, they begin 3 years of training. Peter asks what does he mean by activated, and Hidden Moon goes on to state that everyone here has had their powers activated, which is a painful and very dangerous process. Peter, however, doesn't have to do this because he was born already activated, and that troubles some of the other students. Soon, they arrive at Peter's first appointment, which is Ingrid's office for a psychological evaluation. Peter is slightly hesitant, but Ingrid states that she's just a psychologist. She won't be putting him on any meds, and first, they're gonna just try talking through telepathy. As they continue their conversation in telepath, Ingrid introduces the other children there. Darpin, who is also born activated, is there to help with the process, and soon, everyone starts to go deep into Peter's mind. They see that Peter was a child, and how he used to hurt people and his father, and eventually he was put into a hospital to help control him. Ingrid tells Darpan to pull back and have Peter think of a time where he used his powers and it worked out for the betterment of everyone involved. Peter begins to remember back to a time when he was a baby and he used to play with the toys hanging above his crib. After the appointment, Hidden Moon returns Peter for lunch, and as they walk, Peter begins to hear all of the voices again. He doesn't have the medication to kind of keep it all down. Hidden Moon tells him that he didn't hear them before because Hidden Moon was blocking it, but now they're allowing Peter to use his power. As they sit, another student comes over to introduce himself and he holds out his hand. But Peter just sits there hearing the student comment in his head how Peter is being disrespectful. Angering Peter, he pushes the student away, and the two begin to fight until Hidden Moon dampens both of their powers, telling them that that's enough. Elsewhere though, a girl sits in her room playing an online game. Her friend asks if it's okay for them to finally meet, but she has a hard time because of her image. But her friends tell her not to worry. She's a very special girl. As time goes on, Peter continues his training, but within the deeper chambers of the school. Toyo sits with his other attendants discussing Peter's progress. Hidden Moon also states that Peter continues to be volatile and dangerously antisocial, but Ingrid says that he's been getting better at controlling himself. Ingrid goes on to state that they should hold off on tonight's plan. It's still too soon, but Toyo tells her no. They will continue on with it. The monk sees great things for Peter. And the truth is, Toyo's been lying about what the monk's been stating about Peter. Later, Toyo asks Peter to join him on a walk. He wants to talk to him about a few things that they do here. He takes him deep inside Rachel's department where they track latents from all across the world, individuals with powers locked away. So Peter asks, how does this whole unlocking a latent thing actually work? Can he see it be done? Soon Toyo takes Peter up on that offer and they begin to watch someone strapped to a bed. Toyo says that he doesn't have to watch this, but if he does, he feels that it will show him in the most honest way how this works. Soon lasers begin to shine into the patient's head and then his head explodes. Peter begins to panic, and Toyo tells him that happens to every 1 out of 4 people, which is not something that anyone enjoys when it happens. But the patients do know the risk, and they can choose if they want to go forward or not. If they choose not to, they just wipe their minds of all of the interactions that they've had with the Harada Foundation. But there's one person that they would like Peter to meet, because she's already agreed, so either Peter can attempt to unlock her, or she'll be put into that machine that could kill her. The patient's name is Faith. Toyo brings Peter into the room and he meets Faith, and Faith begins to get excited because she's about to unlock her superpowers. And that's when Peter stops her and asks if she's okay with this. Faith tells him, of course! She's been bullied and picked on in school for her entire life. This will change all of that. She knows it's dangerous, but she knows that this will work. It will change her whole life. So don't be a jerk and make her a superhero already. Peter tells her fine, he'll try, but he doesn't promise anything. Just lean back and close your eyes. Peter begins to look into her brain, and Faith begins to see things and smiles. But soon it goes dark, and Faith begins to wake up with a nosebleed. Peter steps back and he tells Toyo no more. He doesn't want to help anybody anymore. And Toyo tells him he's sorry. He just had to try. Peter goes back to his room to try and relax, but while he lays there, he hears a voice, and when he looks up, he sees Joe sitting at the edge of his bed, telling him that he's always wished for them to live like this. Peter lays back down, stating that none of this is real, and Joe tells him yeah, but there might be something wrong, because he thinks the real Joe is trying to reach out to Peter, and something here is blocking that from happening. And then the Joe image tells Peter that he can take him to the real Joe if he wants to see him. So the fake image Joe and Peter sneak out, and the Joe image walks him through a broken down building and tells him that Joe should be right here. Peter begins to make his way through the building, but then he reaches a room where he feels Joe's location, and he looks down to see Joe dead. They were supposed to help Joe! I should never have left him! Please forgive me, Joe! Please forgive me for leaving you, Peter tells him. And that's when Peter begins to hear a voice behind him stating, finally, they found him. Peter sees that it's Ingrid and he tells her, you were supposed to take care of Joe. And Ingrid says that they tried, but it was just Joe's addictions that were too strong. But they need to go now. They'll get Joe cleaned up and give him a proper burial. Peter begins to wonder how Joe could have OD'd using needles. Joe hates needles, but as he begins to walk out of the building, the people around him all have blank minds, like they were wiped. Something's wrong, no one's talking, and Peter realizes they were wiped by the Harada Foundation. He turns to Ingrid and he tells her that her psyops were here, and he throws Ingrid across the room, and then he stands over her, eyes glowing furiously, demanding to know why. Why did they kill Joe? And that brings us to the conclusion of Harbinger Volume 1. Now this is a really interesting storyline, and it goes for quite a while, but we're also going to be bringing you Harbinger Wars very soon. So hope you guys are looking forward to that. Don't forget to check out the links down below to see more Valiant Entertainment stuff, and I'll see you next time right here. Follow me on Twitter at Comicstorian and Instagram at Comicstorian.